Shasta County's Health and Human Services Agency controls a massive footprint. They manage 1,000 employees and direct a budget of $300 million, representing more than half of the county's total financial output. With hundreds of millions in state and federal dollars flowing in, you'd expect a solvent, secure safety net. Instead, in May 2026, the agency required a $10 million emergency bailout from local taxpayers just to keep its accounts above water. A recent investigative report published by Shasta Unfiltered dug into the agency's internal documents and meeting records to map exactly how an operation of this size begins to fracture. It raises a basic mechanical question. Where exactly does $300 million go? And how does a fully funded government apparatus manage to run out of money? When the vast majority of an agency's revenue comes from distant sources in Sacramento and Washington, D.C., local oversight often fades into the background. The result is a financial black hole operating right in the community's backyard. The warning signs started in the Human Resources Department. Under former director Laura Birch, the agency experienced a severe internal exodus. In a single year, roughly 200 staff members, 20% of the entire workforce, left their positions. Internal accounts pointed to a deteriorating workplace. Employees and union representatives detailed instances of unvetted associates and friends from prior departments being placed into newly created high-level roles over experienced staff. This pattern culminated in the appointment of Christy Coleman as the permanent director. She was elevated to the top position without an open, competitive recruitment process, completely bypassing standard hiring procedures. This chart visualizes the internal reaction to that appointment. A union survey of mid-level managers found 74% directly opposed her permanent placement, citing a deep lack of trust and a pattern of unqualified staffing. Replacing experienced administrators with preferred associates creates immediate operational blind spots. When 20% of your workforce walks out the door, the institutional knowledge required to track and execute a complex public budget evaporates with them. The resulting leadership vacuum had direct financial consequences. The agency has now lost its second chief fiscal officer in a span of roughly 2 years. By May 2024, the internal controls were failing. Agency staff approached the county board requesting retroactive approval for nearly $6 million in spending. They had drawn from internal savings without board authorization, a clear policy violation that had been known internally for over a year before surfacing. When pressed on the growing structural deficits, agency leadership pointed to Washington. They cited shifts in federal legislation, specifically pointing to a bill known as H.R. 1, arguing that new federal rules were forcing their costs higher and draining their resources. But that explanation ignores a much closer driver of the financial strain. California has one of the highest error rates in the country for its local CalFresh food assistance program. State-level mismanagement, weak fraud controls, and federal penalties have shifted a heavy financial burden downward, directly onto local counties. Operating a massive public agency requires building budgets that can withstand regulatory shifts. Repeatedly blaming external policy changes from Sacramento or D.C. obscures the agency's own failure to monitor its spending and adjust its operations. To understand why the spending is so difficult to track, you have to look at how the agency actually delivers its services. It is estimated that up to 2/3 of the $300 million budget never stays inside the agency. It functions as a pass-through, routing hundreds of millions into a massive external network of both nonprofit and for-profit contractors. Looking at this financial loop, we can see how outside providers are paid. This structure creates a perverse incentive. Their revenue is tied directly to the volume of services delivered, the number of beds they fill, counseling sessions they book, or clients they intake, rather than successful long-term outcomes. Under this model, resolving the root cause of a client's crisis is bad for business. If these contracted organizations actually help people become entirely self-sufficient and exit the system, they eliminate their own future funding streams. By outsourcing the vast majority of its budget without strict performance metrics, the county has built a sprawling industry. Both the nonprofits and the for-profit companies are financially rewarded for managing an ongoing crisis, with very little incentive to actually end it. The consequences of this structure are falling squarely on residents. It is the local taxpayer who is currently backstopping this opaque, failing system with a $10 million emergency loan from the general fund. Despite hundreds of millions of dollars flowing to these external providers, there are no public dashboards or clear metrics available to prove whether these programs are generating any long-term success or reducing emergency service usage. Between the chaotic leadership turnover, millions in unapproved internal spending, and an untracked network of contractors, internal reviews are no longer sufficient. A fully independent, forensic audit of the agency's finances and its major contracts is the necessary next step. If you want to keep the pressure on for local transparency and accountability, make sure to like this video, share it with your neighbors, and subscribe to the channel. And to read the full breakdown of this ongoing investigation, head over to shastaunfiltered.com.